A poor single dad let a strange girl stay for one night, never knowing she was the daughter of a millionaire. He only meant to open the door for someone shivering in the cold rain. He didn't ask her name. He didn't expect a thank you. And he certainly never imagined that this girl would turn his entire world upside down with a truth no one could have seen coming. What seemed like a small act of kindness became the beginning of a story about fate, choices, and a kind of love that money could never buy. If you're someone who believes in stories that touch the heart, let me know where you're watching from. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss the next heartwarming story. That night, Cedar Falls was soaked in rain, not the kind that lashes down in fury, but a cold, steady drizzle, as if the sky itself was holding back a sorrow too heavy to name. Ben Carter walked slowly through the familiar intersection after his late shift. The dim glow of the street lamps reflected off his high-visibility jacket, making his figure stand out against the quiet streets. He was on his way home to the small house where his daughter, Maisie, was surely fast asleep. But something at the corner made him stop. A girl, huddled beneath the awning of an old laundromat, soaked to the bone. Her hair hung in tangled clumps. Her thin jacket clung to her like a second skin. She didn't beg, didn't cry, didn't even look around for help. She just sat there in silence, like someone far too used to being forgotten by the world. Ben kept his distance. He didn't approach, but he called out gently, his voice just loud enough to rise above the rain. "It's late. You shouldn't be out here alone." The girl looked up, startled, her eyes wide, not angry, but guarded. "I don't need anyone's pity," she said, her voice dry and cold like the last wind of winter. Ben didn't flinch. He only said, as if offering something simple and honest, "It's not pity. I've got a place, with a roof, hot water, and lights. If you need somewhere to rest until morning, there's a couch." She said nothing. Her gaze stayed fixed on the dark stretch of street beyond. Her shoulders trembled slightly. One arm wrapped around the other, like she was holding herself together. And then, without a word, she nodded. Just once. Softly, but sincerely. Not because she trusted him, not quite because she felt safe, but because sometimes a person just needs a place to breathe, even if only for a night. They walked side by side, not speaking. When they reached the house, Ben opened the door and turned on a warm yellow light. "Shoes off on the mat," he said softly. "Couch is yours tonight. There's a blanket in the cupboard. Bathroom's on the right. Takes a while for the water to heat up, but it will." She nodded again, a little quicker this time. Ben placed a mug of hot water on the table, along with a handwritten note. "If you need to call someone, there's a landline on the wall. Please don't open the bedroom door. My daughter's a light sleeper." The girl, Sophie, sat down, wrapping her hands around the cup. The warmth crept slowly into her frozen fingers. A small house, a stranger. No questions, no judgment, just an open door. And sometimes, kindness doesn't need to be more than that. The morning light filtered through the curtains, gentle as a hand, soothing after a stormy sleep. Sophie opened her eyes, momentarily unsure of where she was. A thin blanket lay across her body. A cup of water, now cold, rested on the table, and a faint, warm scent lingered in the air. Everything felt unfamiliar, yet not frightening. Just seconds later, she remembered. She was on the sofa in a small house. the one where a man named Ben had opened the door to her the night before. A burst of laughter rang out from behind the partition wall. A small, chiming voice followed, bright as wind chimes, "Dad." "The eggs are burning." Sophie sat up, ran a hand through her tangled hair, and stepped quietly toward the sound. In the tiny kitchen, a little girl around 6, with softly curled hair, was standing on a wooden chair, wielding a wooden spoon like she was commanding the universe. Beside her stood Ben, holding a frying pan, his expression somewhere between embarrassed and patient. The girl turned around when she noticed Sophie. Her wide eyes grew even rounder, then lit up as if she'd just seen something wonderfully exciting. "Are you the princess who slept on the sofa?" she asked, her innocent voice making Sophie laugh. A real laugh, unforced and free. "I suppose I am," Sophie replied, crouching down to meet her gaze. "And who might you be, Maisie?" 6.5, the girl declared proudly. "Dad said a girl got caught in the rain, so he let you stay over. Just like a fairy tale. The only thing missing is a talking cat." Ben turned, his cheeks red from the egg mishap. "We're attempting breakfast," he said. "But we may need a rescue team." Sophie glanced around the kitchen and hesitated. "I'm not exactly a great cook, but I can help clean up the chaos." "Good enough." Ben grinned. "In this house, as long as nothing explodes, you're qualified." The three of them maneuvered through the small space. Maisie spread butter on toast, her hands covered in crumbs as she hummed an unrecognizable tune. Ben gave the eggs another try. This time, they were only slightly burned. Sophie fumbled with the pancake batter, spilling a bit on the floor, which sent Maisie into a fit of giggles. "It's okay," she said, handing Sophie a napkin. "Dad spills stuff all the time." Sophie looked at the little girl, then at Ben. She didn't know why her eyes stung a little. Maybe it was because she wasn't used to kitchens, or maybe it was because, in all her life, she'd never felt like she belonged in one. They sat down around the small wooden table. The eggs were a bit salty, the pancakes slightly burnt, and the orange juice was probably the only perfect thing. But no one complained. Ben chewed thoughtfully and said with mock seriousness, "I think this might be the best breakfast all week." Sophie raised an eyebrow. "It's only Tuesday." Ben winked. "Exactly. The rest of the week doesn't stand a chance." Maisie nodded solemnly, as if that was the most obvious truth in the world. Sophie giggled, then realized she'd laughed more in the past hour than in the entire month before. And in that moment, in a kitchen filled with the scent of burnt butter and the chatter of a child, Sophie began to understand. Family isn't the place you're born into. It's the place where you're seen, where you're heard, and where someone pulls out a chair for you at the table, even when all you bring with you is a pair of rain-soaked shoulders. That afternoon, after washing the dishes and tidying up the kitchen, Ben poured Sophie a glass of water, then hesitated before saying, "I know the owner of the laundromat on Oak Street. They're short-staffed right now. It's nothing fancy. But if you want to give it a try, I can take you over." Sophie went quiet for a few seconds. She wasn't used to people offering her options. No prying, no judgment. Just a gentle suggestion, like a small door cracking open at just the right moment. She nodded. The laundromat was right on the corner, its painted sign peeling, windows fogged with steam, and the scent of detergent lingering in the air. The woman behind the counter looked Sophie up and down. Not warmly, but not unkindly either. "Are you a friend of Ben's?" she asked. Sophie nodded. "Grab this apron. Start now." And just like that, she began. No paperwork, not many questions, just a mountain of towels, uniforms, and the constant hum of dryers spinning like wheels that never stop. The afternoon passed in the aching strain of her arms. Soap worked its way under her nails. Heat flushed her cheeks. Sweat soaked into the old cotton shirt Ben had lent her. Sophie had once been used to leather chairs, boardrooms, and cold, clipped conversations. But here, everything smelled strong, of effort, of people, of life. And strangely, she didn't hate it. She just wasn't used to it. At 5 o'clock, Sophie stepped out back, leaning against the weathered brick wall. The wind slipped through a crack and dried the sweat-matted strands of hair clinging to her forehead. She took off her old shoes, the only thing she had left after the night she was robbed, now nearly torn apart at the heel. Her soles burned. A blister had risen on her big toe. She wanted to give up. Not because she was weak, but because, for the first time in her life, she was truly standing on her own 2 feet. The next morning, when she opened the door and stepped out onto the porch, she saw a pair of shoes. Bright white, simple, unbranded, new, but not flashy. And most importantly, her size. Tucked inside the left shoe was a neatly folded slip of paper, in soft, slanted handwriting. It read, "If you must walk, walk without pain." Sophie stood still for a long time. The morning breeze whispered through the porch rafters. Sparrows chirped quietly on the power lines. And there, in the midst of an ordinary morning with nothing remarkable, was the quietest gift she had ever received. No sender's name, no explanation. Just someone who had seen her. And in a world where everything usually comes with conditions, sometimes a pair of well-fitting shoes is the gentlest way of saying you deserve kindness, even if you've never known how to receive it. That night, the wind in Cedar Falls blew stronger than usual. There was no rain, but the chill crept through every seam of clothing, making people hunch their shoulders as they stepped outside. Ben was loading clean laundry into the back of his old truck, each bag neatly folded and labeled with the names of familiar clients. Sophie stood nearby, clutching her thin coat tightly around her. She hadn't had the chance to change yet. "Are you sure you want to come?" Ben asked as he tied the last strap. "It's almost midnight." Sophie nodded. "I want to see how you work. At the very least. I don't want to always be the one being helped." Ben smiled. He didn't say anything else. The truck rolled through quiet, narrow streets. Streetlights stretched out like pale golden threads across the dark night. They stopped at a few homes, dropped off clothes, knocked softly, and moved on. No one opened the door, but sometimes, from behind a curtain, a pair of eyes peeked out, then gently closed again. When they reached house number 15, Ben pointed toward the porch. "Want to give it a try? It's a light one." Sophie nodded, took the bag